Hi, this is Colin from the History Pilgrim. I hope you've been enjoying my videos and I'd be interested to hear your comments. Be sure to like and share with a friend. In this video, I will cover the lesser-known failed presidential assassination attempts, which are plots in which the assassin did not succeed. These attempts remind us that such a high position of power comes with extreme peril, and that even the most protected public figures are not immune to the deadly intentions of others. When people think of an assassination attempt on Abraham Lincoln's life, their mind immediately turns to the night of April 14, 1865, when John Wilkes Booth carried out his infamous assassination attempt at Ford's Theater. However, what is often overlooked is that Lincoln's life was in danger on several occasions long before that fateful evening. One of the most intriguing attempts on his life occurred in August 1864, and it very well could have changed the course of American history. By the summer of 1864, Abraham Lincoln was already heavily involved in the ongoing Civil War. Lincoln often traveled between the White House and the Soldiers' Home, which was a rural retreat outside of the District of Columbia, where he could go to escape the heat. During his evening commute back to the White House, he was struck in the head. This led to his famous hat falling off. The soldiers who were following him retrieved his hat and found a bullet hole in it, which was a chilling sign of how close he came to dying. To this day, the assassin has never been identified. Had the bullet have been fired even just a little lower, history might have been drastically different. Because this occurred during the height of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was absolutely essential to holding the Union together. If Lincoln had been killed, then his opponent George McClellan would have won, potentially leading to a negotiated peace with the Confederacy, which would have allowed slavery to continue. A lesser-known but significant plot known as the Baltimore Plot unfolded in February 1861 as Abraham Lincoln traveled to Washington, D.C. for his first inauguration. In early 1861, the U.S. was on the brink of falling apart. Many Southerners were strongly opposed to Lincoln, as they felt that him being strongly abolitionist would spell the end of their plantation-based economy. As Lincoln left home from Springfield, Illinois to Washington, D.C., he embarked on a train journey which would grant him multiple stops where he could give speeches and meet the public. With this being well-known information, Confederate sympathizers viewed this as an opportunity to stop Lincoln from reaching the White House. Several individuals planned to kill Lincoln when he was switching trains in Maryland. Because there was no direct link between rail stations, this meant Abraham Lincoln would have needed to have stepped off the train and traveled by carriage through the city to board another train. This provided the perfect window of opportunity for an assassination. Fearing for the future president's safety, Samuel Morse Felton, who was the president of the railroad company which Lincoln was traveling on, had heard rumors of an attempt to assassinate Lincoln. He hired a private detective named Pinkerton, who deployed several of his own secret agents into Baltimore. They posed as Southern sympathizers, and the spies attended taverns and uncovered the plot. Pinkerton himself met with some of the radicals, while pretending to be a businessman from the South. Pinkerton ended up meeting with Lincoln himself in Philadelphia on the evening of February 21, 1861, to warn Lincoln of an attempt on his life. This led to a plot to take an earlier train and travel through Baltimore in disguise as an old woman. On the night of February 22, 1861, Lincoln took a separate train to Baltimore, thus saving his life. The attempted assassination of President Richard Nixon is one of the lesser-known but deeply disturbing moments in American history. It happened on February 22, 1974, and was carried out by a troubled and delusional man named Samuel Byck. Byck was not a professional assassin or a political operative. He was a mentally unstable, unemployed tire salesman from Pennsylvania, who had become convinced that Nixon was responsible for all of his personal and financial problems. Byck's plan was both terrifying and chaotic. He decided he would hijack a commercial airplane and crash it directly into the White House, a method of assassination horrifyingly similar to what terrorists would attempt nearly 3 decades later on 9/11. On the morning of February 22nd, Byck stormed into Baltimore Washington International Airport armed with a stolen handgun and a homemade bomb. He shot and killed an airport security guard, then forced his way onto Delta Airlines Flight 523, which was preparing to take off for Atlanta. He stormed the cockpit and shot both the pilot and co-pilot, killing the pilot instantly. Byck demanded the remaining pilot take off immediately, but the plane was still connected to the jetway and unable to move. Outside the aircraft, officers from airport security and FBI positioned themselves strategically, ensuring that Byck had no viable escape route. As he ranted and threatened inside the cockpit, chaos unfolded around him. Despite his demands, the plane never budged. By the time police officers had secured the cabin, Byck had already succumbed to the events set in motion by his own violent ambition. The Blair House is an elegant historic residence located directly across the street from the White House in Washington, D.C. Often called the President's Guest House, it is traditionally used for hosting visiting foreign dignitaries and important guests of the U.S. government. However, from 1948 to 1952, it served an entirely different purpose. It became the temporary home of Harry S. Truman and his family while the White House underwent extensive renovations. During this time, the White House was so structurally sound that engineers feared it might collapse. As a result, the president relocated to Blair House, transforming it into the de facto executive mansion. On November 1, 1950, two Puerto Rican nationalists launched a violent attack on Blair House. Their motive was political. They were part of a Puerto Rican independence movement and hoped that assassinating the President of the United States, Harry S. Truman at the time, would bring attention to their cause. Armed with pistols, the two men approached Blair House in broad daylight and opened fire on the guards stationed outside. As a result of the violent gunfight, a Secret Service agent was killed. One of the gunmen was mortally injured and the other was arrested. The assassination attempt ultimately failed, but it highlighted the intense political unrest tied to the question of Puerto Rican independence. It also exposed how global politics, colonial histories, and nationalistic rage could converge in violence even in the heart of Washington, D.C. One of the earliest and strangest assassination attempts on a U.S. president's life occurred on January 30, 1835, when Andrew Jackson became the target of an attempted assassination, while he was leaving a funeral in Washington, D.C. The would-be killer, who was a painter named Richard Lawrence, had delusions that he'd been wronged by the government. The assassin confronted Jackson near the Capitol building, drew two pistols, and fired on Jackson. However, the guns misfired and Jackson attacked Lawrence with a cane. Afterwards, Lawrence was subdued and put in a mental institution. This incident marked a turning point for security protocols for future presidents. In conclusion, each of these incidents serves as a reminder of just how fragile leadership can be. A slight change in aim of a gun, or a different decision in the moment, could have altered the course of American history in ways we can only imagine. Ultimately, these lesser-known assassination attempts show us that history isn't just shaped by moments that happen, but also by the ones that almost did. In some cases, the survival of a president hinged on nothing more than a bad aim, misfiring weapons, or an alert bystander acting at the right time. If these incidents prove anything, it's that sometimes history is determined not by fate or destiny, but by sheer luck and the strange unpredictability of human events. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to thank you all for your support, as I've had this channel for over a year now and have come a very long way. I'd be interested if anyone had any suggestions for future videos. Be sure to like and share with a friend. Sincerely, the History Pilgrim.